They say when a king falls, his empire crumbles with him. Roman DeLuca learned that lesson the night 3 bullets shattered his spine and left him trapped in a wheelchair, watching his own kingdom slip through paralyzed fingers. At his nephew's wedding, surrounded by sharks dressed in suits who smell blood in the water, he sits alone like a monument to his own failure. But then a timid waitress with terrified eyes and a borrowed dress does something no one has dared in months. She looks at him like he's still human. That single act of courage will either save them both or destroy everything they have left. If you're ready to see how one moment of kindness can change everything, stay with me until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. The Venetian ballroom dripped with the kind of wealth that whispered rather than shouted. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across marble floors, and champagne flowed like water while a string quartet played something tasteful and forgettable in the corner. Everyone looked perfect. Everyone looked happy. Everyone was lying. Roman DeLuca sat at the edge of it all, wheels locked, hands resting on expensive Italian fabric that suddenly felt like a costume. His nephew's wedding. He should have felt something, pride maybe, or the warm satisfaction of watching his family's legacy continue. Instead, he felt like a relic, a cautionary tale in a $10,000 suit. The chair was custom-made, sleek black with chrome accents that caught the light just right. It cost more than most people's cars. Didn't matter. Might as well have been made of neon and duct tape for all the stares it attracted. Pity dressed up as concern. Curiosity pretending to be respect. He caught fragments of conversation as people passed, always just loud enough. Shame about Roman. I heard he can't even... Marco's really stepping up, though. Strong leadership. Marco. His brother. The word left a bitter taste that had nothing to do with the champagne he wasn't drinking. Roman watched the crowd move around him like water around a stone. Old allies who suddenly had urgent conversations elsewhere when he rolled past. Business partners who used to seek his opinion now directed their questions to Marco, who stood near the bar holding court like he'd already inherited the throne. The worst part wasn't the stares or the whispers. It was the silence. The careful way people edited their words around him now, like he'd lost his hearing along with his legs. Like compassion meant treating him like glass instead of steel. Mr. DeLuca, a young associate, he couldn't remember the name, approached with that particular expression Roman had learned to hate, aggressive cheerfulness. Great party, huh? You must be so proud of Anthony. I am. The kid waited for more. When nothing came, he shifted his weight. Well, if you need anything, I'm fine. Right, of course, I just meant, I know what you meant. The associate retreated, probably relieved. Roman didn't blame him. He'd become the conversational equivalent of a minefield. Every interaction required careful navigation, and most people didn't have the energy. Across the room, Marco laughed, loud enough to turn heads, commanding enough to hold attention. Their father had laughed like that. Could work a room like he was conducting an orchestra, every person playing their part without even realizing it. Roman used to do that too. Before the warehouse, before the ambush, before he'd made the mistake of trusting the wrong shipment at the wrong dock and walked straight into hell wearing his best shoes. He remembered the sound more than the pain, 3 precise cracks that echoed off concrete and metal, remembered falling, remembered Marco's face appearing above him, and for just a second, just one fractured heartbeat, something that looked almost like satisfaction flickering across his brother's features before the mask of concern slammed down. Roman had replayed that moment 1,000 times in the months since, tried to convince himself he'd imagined it. That pain and shock had distorted his perception. But he hadn't imagined the way Marco had stepped seamlessly into his responsibilities, hadn't imagined how quickly his brother had filled the vacuum, making decisions, shifting alliances, repositioning pieces on the board, while Roman was still learning how to transfer from bed to chair without assistance. You're being paranoid, his sister Teresa had said when he'd voiced his suspicions. Marco's helping. That's what family does. Maybe. Or maybe Marco was just smart enough to wait for Roman to destroy himself from the inside out. Grief and rage made better weapons than bullets sometimes. The music shifted to something slower, and couples began drifting toward the dance floor. Roman watched them with the detached interest of someone observing a foreign ritual. Dancing. He used to be good at it, used to sweep women across floors just like this one, all charm and controlled power. Now he was furniture, expensive, pitied furniture. Excuse me. The voice was so quiet he almost missed it. Female, young, nervous. Roman turned his head and found himself looking at a woman who didn't belong here. Not in the obvious way. Her dress was appropriate, if a little plain, and she'd clearly made an effort with her appearance. But she carried herself like someone who'd learned to take up as little space as possible. Shoulders slightly curved, eyes that didn't quite meet his, hands clasped in front of her like she was afraid they might do something embarrassing without supervision. What? He didn't mean for it to come out harsh, but subtlety had stopped being his strong suit. She flinched but didn't retreat. Sorry, I'm in your way. I'll move. She wasn't anywhere near his way, but she'd already started backing up, aiming for the shadows near the kitchen entrance where the auxiliary tables had been set up for people who weren't quite important enough for the main room. Wait. The word surprised him as much as it did her. She froze, eyes going wide. Brown, he noticed. The kind that probably looked warm in better lighting, but just seemed frightened now. You're not in my way, Roman said, softer. You're fine. Oh, okay. She hovered there, clearly wanting to leave, but too polite to just bolt. Mommy! A small body collided with her legs. A boy, maybe 4 or 5, all energy and zero awareness of social boundaries. He had his mother's eyes and hair several shades lighter, curls that looked like they'd given up on any attempt at order. Danny, shh! The woman, Lydia, he'd later learn, put a hand on her son's shoulder, trying to contain him without causing a scene. Inside voice. But, Mom, look! The kid pointed directly at Roman with the kind of unfiltered enthusiasm only children possessed. That's the coolest wheelchair I've ever seen. Does it go fast? Can it do tricks? Does it have secret compartments? Danny! Lydia's face went 3 shades of mortified. I'm so sorry, we should go. But Roman was laughing, actually laughing. The sound felt rusty, like a door that hadn't been opened in months, but it was real. It doesn't do tricks, he told the boy seriously, but it does go pretty fast. Danny's eyes lit up like he'd just been given classified information. Really? How fast? Danny, please. Lydia was trying to physically steer her son away now, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I'm so sorry, mister. We shouldn't bother you. DeLuca, Roman supplied, and he's not bothering me. She finally looked at him then, really looked, and something shifted in her expression. Not pity, thank God, not pity. Something else. Something that felt uncomfortably close to recognition, like she'd seen something in him that he'd thought he'd successfully hidden. You looked lonely, she said quietly, then immediately seemed to regret it. I mean, not that I just thought, I am, Roman said, cutting through her spiral. Lonely. The admission hung between them, too honest for a wedding reception, too raw for small talk between strangers. Around them, the party continued its careful choreography, but in their small pocket of space, something had gone still. Lydia worried her bottom lip, a gesture that made her look even younger than she probably was. Mid-20s, maybe. Young enough that her son's age suggested she'd been practically a child herself when he was born. Me too, she finally admitted. Lonely. They stood there. Well, he sat, she stood, in a moment of perfect understanding. 2 people who didn't fit. 2 people the party had forgotten existed. Then Danny, bored with adult feelings, tugged on his mother's hand. Can we dance? You said we could dance. Maybe later, baby, when it's not so crowded. But I want to dance now. Roman watched her deflate slightly, that universal parent expression of wanting to give your kid everything but knowing you can't. Not here. Not where everyone could see. Not where a single mother in a borrowed dress might be judged for taking up space that wasn't really hers to claim. Dance with me. The words came out before Roman could think them through, before he could remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea, before he could recall that he hadn't been on a dance floor since bullets had rearranged his spine. Lydia stared at him. What? Dance with me, Roman repeated, committed now. You wanted a dance partner. Here I am.
You don't have to. I wasn't fishing for. I know. He rolled forward slightly, closing the distance between them. But your son wants to dance, and I'm sick of sitting in the corner like a piece of broken furniture. So unless you have a better offer. She didn't. They both knew it. The question was whether she had the courage to say yes. Roman saw the exact moment she made her decision, saw her spine straighten just slightly, her chin lift a fraction of an inch, saw her reach for something inside herself that had probably been buried for a long time. Okay, Lydia said. Yes, Danny cheered. Lydia looked terrified. Roman felt something that might have been anticipation if he remembered what that felt like. She moved behind him, uncertain, awkward, clearly having no idea what the protocol was for dancing with someone in a wheelchair. Her hands hovered near the handles. Just push, Roman said. I'll navigate. What if people... Let them stare. They were already staring. That was what did it. That acknowledgement that they were both already spectacles, that they had nothing left to lose that hadn't already been taken. Lydia's hands settled on the wheelchair handles, warm even through the metal. Okay, where are we going? Middle of the dance floor. That's where everyone can see. I know. He felt her hesitation, felt the way her hands trembled slightly. Then, with a breath that sounded like surrender or maybe victory, she began to push. The crowd didn't part so much as pause. Conversation stuttered. The string quartet played on, oblivious, but the dancers began to notice, began to stop, began to stare. Roman felt every eye in the room turn toward them, felt the weight of judgment, curiosity, confusion, felt the heat of attention he'd spent months trying to avoid. And he didn't care. Lydia brought him to the center of the floor, that sacred space usually reserved for the bride and groom, for people who belonged, for moments that mattered. She stopped there, hands still on the handles, frozen in the spotlight she'd probably spent her whole life avoiding. Now what? She whispered. Now we dance. I don't know how to... Neither do I. Not like this. So we'll figure it out together. The music swelled, some romantic standard that had been played at a million weddings, and Roman reached up, found her hand, pulled it forward so he could hold it properly. Other hand on my shoulder, he instructed. She moved around to his side, everything about her posture screaming discomfort. Her hand landed on his shoulder like a bird that might startle at any moment. Look at me, Roman said. Not them, me. Lydia's eyes dropped to his face. Up close, he could see the exact shade of her nervousness, could see the way her breathing had gone shallow and quick. I'm scared, she admitted. Good. So am I. He began to move then, rolling in slow circles, using his hands on the wheels to guide them in a pattern that wasn't quite a waltz, but wasn't entirely random either. Lydia moved with him, hesitant at first, then gradually finding the rhythm. Her hand tightened on his shoulder. Her fingers curled around his. Danny ran circles around them, making vrooming sounds and declaring this the best dance ever. Roman ignored the stares, ignored his brother's shocked expression across the room, ignored the whispers and the phones being raised to capture this moment for dissection later. He focused on the woman beside him, on the way her fear was slowly transforming into something that looked almost like joy. On the way she'd stopped trying to disappear and had started, just barely, to take up space. The song ended, another began. They kept dancing. Why are you doing this? Lydia asked eventually, her voice low enough that only he could hear. Doing what? This. Dancing with me, making everyone look at us. Roman considered his answer. Could have given her something smooth, something charming. Could have pretended this was normal magnanimity from a man who had everything. Instead, he told the truth. Because you looked at me like I was still a person, he said. Not a tragedy, not a has-been, just a person. And I can't remember the last time someone did that. Her eyes went soft. You are a person, a lonely one, like me. Yeah. Roman's chest felt tight. Like you. They danced through 3 more songs. By the end, other couples had joined them, cautiously at first, then with growing confidence, like Roman and Lydia had somehow given permission for imperfection, for dancing that wasn't smooth,
for moments that weren't Instagram perfect. When the music finally shifted to something upbeat and Danny demanded his mother's full attention, Lydia stepped back with visible reluctance. "Thank you," she said, "for that. Thank you for asking. I didn't ask. My son pointed at your chair and mortified me." Details. Roman found himself smiling, actually smiling, the real kind that reached his eyes. "What's your name? I should probably know that." "Lydia. Lydia Vale." "Roman DeLuca." "I know who you are." She said it simply, without weight. "Everyone knows who you are." "And you still ask me to dance?" "You asked me, technically." "You said yes." "I did." Lydia glanced toward the ballroom doors, toward escape. "I should probably get Danny home. It's past his bedtime." Roman didn't want her to leave, didn't want to go back to sitting alone, to being invisible in plain sight. But he had no reason to ask her to stay. No right to keep her in a world that clearly made her as uncomfortable as it made him angry. "Okay," he said. "Good night, Lydia Vale." "Good night, Roman DeLuca." She started to leave, Danny's hand in hers, already fading back into the shadows where people like her learned to live, where people like him used to hunt. "Lydia." She turned, waiting. "Would you—" Roman stopped, suddenly aware of how absurd this was about to sound. "Would you want to get coffee sometime, or, I don't know, whatever people do when they're trying to not be lonely?" Her expression did something complicated. Hope mixed with fear, mixed with disbelief. "You want to get coffee with me? I want to talk to someone who sees me. Yes. She gestured at herself, at Danny, at everything she clearly thought wasn't enough. "I'm a single mom who works 3 jobs and lives in a studio apartment above a laundromat. People like you don't—" "People like me are lonely too," Roman interrupted. "And I'm asking. So if you want to say yes, say yes. If you don't, say no. But don't say no because you think you're not enough. You're the most real thing I've encountered in months." Lydia was quiet for a long moment. Danny tugged on her hand, oblivious to the weight of what was happening. "Thursday," she finally said. "I have Thursday mornings free." "Thursday morning. Where?" "There's a coffee shop on Delancey, the one with the blue awning. Nothing fancy." "Perfect. 10 o'clock?" 10 o'clock. She left then, really left, taking her son and her borrowed dress and disappearing into the night. Roman stayed where she'd left him, in the middle of the dance floor, feeling something he hadn't felt since 3 bullets had changed everything. Hope. It was dangerous. It was stupid. It was probably going to hurt like hell. But it was better than numbness. That was quite a show. Roman didn't turn, didn't need to. He'd recognize Marco's voice anywhere, smooth as expensive scotch, and twice as likely to burn. "Something to say, brother?" Marco moved into view, drink in hand, expression carefully neutral. "Just wondering what you're doing. That girl has a name, Lydia." "Fine. Lydia. She's nobody, no family, no connections, no use to you." "Maybe I don't need everything to be useful anymore." "That's the wheelchair talking." Roman's hands tightened on his armrests. "Careful." "I'm just saying." Marco leaned in, voice dropping to that particular register of fake concern he'd perfected. "You're vulnerable right now. People can take advantage, and a single mother sees a wealthy man in need of compassion? That's a story as old as time." "She didn't know who I was when she approached me." "She knew. Everyone knows. And even if she didn't, her kid sure made sure you'd notice them." "Say." The suggestion made Roman's blood heat. He's 5 years old. Exactly. Perfect prop for a woman looking for a meal ticket. "Get out of my sight. Roman, now!" Marco straightened, wounded dignity replacing concern so smoothly it had to be rehearsed. "I'm just trying to protect you. Someone has to, since you seem determined to make choices that could compromise everything Dad built. What I do with my personal life doesn't affect the business. Everything affects the business. You taught me that." He walked away then, leaving Roman alone again, but this time the loneliness felt different, poisoned by suggestion, by the seed of doubt Marco had planted with surgical precision. Was he being played? Had Lydia seen an opportunity and taken it? Had that whole moment been calculated manipulation instead of genuine connection? Roman replayed their interaction, looking for signs he'd missed, but all he could see was her fear, Her embarrassment when her son had pointed at his chair, her trembling hands when she'd agreed to dance. You couldn't fake that kind of fear. You could fake confidence, could fake attraction, could fake a lot of things. But genuine terror of being seen? That was real. Marco was wrong. Had to be wrong. Or Roman was so desperate for human connection that he'd believe anything. Thursday morning would tell him which. The party continued around him, celebrating a union of two families, two fortunes, two futures being bound together with champagne and promises. Roman sat in the middle of it all and thought about a coffee shop with a blue awning, about a woman who'd looked at him like he was human, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as broken as everyone seemed to think, or maybe he was just fooling himself. Either way, he'd find out Thursday at 10 o'clock. The night wound down in the way expensive parties did, gradually, elegantly, with people making tasteful exits and air-kissing promises to connect soon. Roman stayed until the end, partly from obligation and partly because leaving required assistance he wasn't ready to ask for. Teresa found him eventually, his sister who'd inherited their mother's warmth and their father's steel spine in equal measure. That was something, she said, settling into a chair beside him, not asking permission, just being there. Marco already lectured me. Marco's an idiot. I'm not here to lecture. She watched the last guests trickling out. I'm here to ask if you're okay. Why wouldn't I be? Because you just slow danced with a stranger in front of everyone who's been watching you fall apart for months. That's either very brave or very desperate, and I'm not sure which worries me more. Roman turned to look at his sister, really look at her. Teresa had been the one keeping things together while he'd spiraled and Marco had maneuvered. She ran the legitimate businesses, managed the family's public face, and asked for nothing in return except honesty when it mattered. Both, he admitted, brave and desperate. You like her. I don't know her. But you want to. He did. That was the terrifying part. He wanted to know everything about Lydia Vale, her story, her struggles, what had made her both timid and courageous enough to approach him. He wanted to know if Thursday at 10 o'clock would feel as real as tonight had felt. I'm meeting her for coffee Thursday. Teresa smiled. Good. You need someone who's not related to you or on the payroll, someone real. Marco thinks she's using me. Marco thinks everyone's using everyone. It's exhausting. She stood, pressed a kiss to the top of his head. Trust your gut, Roman. It's kept you alive this long. His gut had also walked him into an ambush that had cost him his legs, but Roman didn't mention that. After Teresa left, the venue staff began their efficient dismantling of the celebration. Roman watched them work, these invisible people who made magic happen and disappeared before anyone thought to thank them. Like Lydia probably did. 3 jobs, she'd said. Studio apartment above a laundromat. The kind of life most of the people at this wedding would never see, would never have to think about. But she'd looked at him like he was worth seeing, like his chair didn't define him, like he was still capable of being something other than a cautionary tale. Roman rolled toward the exit, nodding to the valet, who jumped to help. The kid, probably not much older than Lydia, handled his chair with careful respect, no pity in sight. Nice party, Mr. DeLuca. Thanks. That dance was really cool. My mom's in a chair. She'd have loved seeing that. Something in Roman's chest unknotted. Yeah? Yeah. She always says the worst part isn't the chair. It's people treating her like she disappeared when she sat down. The kid, Michael, his name tag read, helped Roman into the car with practiced ease. You didn't disappear tonight. No, Roman agreed. I didn't. The drive home should have given him time to think, to process, to prepare for whatever Thursday would bring. Instead, Roman found himself replaying every moment with Lydia. The way her hand had felt on his shoulder, the way her fear had transformed into something brighter, the way she'd said yes when everything in her posture had been screaming no. She was brave. Braver than him, maybe, because he'd spent months hiding. She'd spent years surviving, and she'd still found the courage to be kind. Marco was wrong about her, had to be, but the doubt lived there now, coiled in his gut like a snake. And Roman knew from experience that doubt was harder to kill than most things. His penthouse greeted him with the kind of silence that money bought. Expensive, absolute, and utterly lonely. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city,
millions of lights representing millions of lives he'd never know.
Somewhere out there, Lydia was probably tucking her son into bed, probably worrying about tomorrow's shift or next week's rent or all the small crises that made up a life lived without safety nets. She didn't belong in his world. He didn't belong in hers. But Thursday, at 10 o'clock, they'd meet in the middle, in a coffee shop with a blue awning, in a space that belonged to neither of them. And Roman would find out if tonight had been real or if he'd just been desperate enough to believe in fairy tales. He transferred to bed, a process that had gone from humiliating to merely tedious over the past months, and lay there staring at the ceiling. Somewhere above him, in the penthouse above his penthouse, Marco probably slept soundly, dreaming of empires and thrones and all the things he thought should be his. Roman dreamed of brown eyes and trembling hands and a 5-year-old's enthusiasm for cool wheelchairs. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. Thursday arrived with rain, the cold, miserable kind that turned the city gray and made everything feel heavier than it should. Roman woke at 6 out of habit, his body refusing to acknowledge that he no longer had morning meetings or territories to inspect, or 100 small emergencies requiring his immediate attention. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, and wondered what the hell he was doing. Coffee with a stranger. A woman who probably spent the last 3 days regretting her moment of courage. A woman who might not even show up. The smart thing would be to cancel, to text some polite excuse and return to the safer isolation of his penthouse where nobody could disappoint him because nobody could reach him. But Roman had spent 6 months doing the smart thing, and it had only made him more hollow. At 9:15, he rolled into his closet and spent an embarrassing amount of time deciding what to wear. A suit felt too formal. Casual felt too calculated. He finally settled on dark jeans and a gray sweater, the kind of outfit that said he'd tried without trying too hard. His driver knew better than to comment when Roman asked to be taken to Delancey Street. Just nodded and helped with the accessibility ramp they'd installed in the Mercedes after the shooting. The whole process had become routine, which somehow made it worse. The coffee shop appeared at 9:50, a small place wedged between a dry cleaner and a bodega. Blue awning faded but still cheerful despite the rain. Through the window, Roman could see mismatched furniture and walls covered in local art that probably wasn't worth much but filled the space anyway. No sign of Lydia. "Want me to wait?" his driver asked. Roman thought about it, about having an escape route ready, about protecting himself from the possibility that she wouldn't come. "No, I'll text when I'm ready." "You sure, boss?" "I'm sure." The driver hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, be safe." Safe. As if coffee with a single mother posed any threat compared to what Roman dealt with daily, compared to his own brother circling like a shark waiting for blood. But maybe that was the point. Maybe safe meant something different now, meant emotional risk instead of physical danger, meant showing up without armor and seeing what happened. Roman rolled through the door, which mercifully didn't have a step, and into warmth that smelled like espresso and cinnamon. A few customers glanced up, did the double take he'd grown used to, then returned to their laptops and conversations. He found a corner table that gave him a view of the door and waited. 10 o'clock came and went. 10:15. At 10:20, Roman pulled out his phone to text Teresa that she'd been right to worry. That desperation had made him stupid. That he should have known better than to... The door chimed. Lydia rushed in, soaked and breathless, hair plastered to her face and apology written in every line of her body. She spotted him immediately, relief flooding her features. "I'm so sorry," she said, hurrying over. "The bus was late, and then Danny's babysitter. I'm sorry. I know your time is valuable, and I..." "Breathe." She stopped, chest heaving, looking like she'd just run a marathon instead of being 20 minutes late. "You came," Roman said simply. "That's what matters." I wanted to." She squeezed water from her jacket, making a puddle on the floor. "I'm a mess." "You're here." Something in those 2 words seemed to steady her. She nodded, took a breath that looked almost painful, and slid into the chair across from him. Up close, without the wedding lighting and champagne haze, Lydia looked even younger than he'd thought. Maybe mid-20s, with the kind of tiredness that spoke to years of not quite enough sleep, or food, or time. Her clothes were clean but worn, her hands chapped from work he could only guess at. She was beautiful in the way broken things sometimes were, fragile and fierce at the same time. "What do you drink?" Roman asked. Oh, I can get… Lydia, what do you drink? She bit her lip. Hot chocolate, with extra whipped cream. Not coffee. Of course not coffee. She probably couldn't afford to develop expensive tastes. Roman flagged down the barista, a girl with pink hair and more piercings than seemed structurally sound, and ordered Lydia's hot chocolate along with a black coffee for himself. You don't have to buy… I asked you here. I'm buying. Lydia's fingers twisted together on the table, nervous energy she probably didn't realize she was broadcasting. I almost didn't come. Why? Because this doesn't make sense, you and me. I kept thinking maybe you'd made some kind of mistake, or I'd misunderstood, or I'd come to my senses and realize I shouldn't waste time on someone beneath my station. Roman kept his voice level, no accusation in it. She flushed. Something like that? Did you come because you felt obligated? No, I came because I wanted to. The admission seemed to cost her something. I haven't wanted something for myself in a really long time. The barista brought their drinks. Lydia's hot chocolate came with a mountain of whipped cream that made her smile despite her obvious discomfort. She wrapped both hands around the cup like it was precious. Tell me about your son, Roman said. Her whole face changed. Danny? That his name? Danny? Daniel, technically, but he's been Danny since the hospital. She took a sip, got whipped cream on her nose, didn't seem to notice. He's 5. Smart as hell. Exhausting. The best thing I ever did. And his father? The warmth disappeared from her expression. Not in the picture. Hasn't been since I told him I was pregnant. His loss. That's what I tell myself on good days. Lydia wiped the cream from her nose absently. On bad days, I wonder what I did wrong. How I misread someone that completely. Roman knew that feeling. You were young. 19. Stupid. Hopeful. That's not the same as stupid. She looked at him then, really looked, and Roman saw the exact moment she decided to be honest instead of careful. I thought he loved me, Lydia said quietly. Thought we'd get married and have this whole life together. Instead, he handed me $300 for an abortion and told me to lose his number. Did you consider it, the abortion? For about 10 minutes. Then I realized I was more scared of losing Danny than I was of raising him alone. She laughed, but it sounded wrong. Turns out I didn't know what scared meant. My parents kicked me out, said I'd shamed the family. His parents threatened to sue me for trying to trap their son. I spent my 3rd trimester sleeping in my car. Roman's hands tightened on his cup. That's 5 years ago. Ancient history. But her eyes said different. Said those wounds were still fresh, still bleeding under whatever scar tissue she'd managed to grow. I have Danny now, and a real apartment, even if it's tiny, and 3 jobs that keep us fed. We're okay. 3 jobs? Waitress breakfast and lunch at a diner, evening shift at a grocery store, weekend cleaning for a company that does office buildings. She recited it like a resume. I'm good at working, at surviving. That's not living. It's what I've got. The matter-of-fact way she said it hit harder than tears would have. This wasn't self-pity. This was just reality for someone who'd learned not to expect better. What about school? Roman asked. Job training? Something that might cost money I don't have, time I can't spare? Lydia shook her head. I looked into it. Community college, night classes, all of it. But I can't work 3 jobs and go to school and raise Danny. The math doesn't work. So you're just going to keep grinding until, what, you collapse? Until Danny's old enough that I don't need as much childcare. Until I've saved enough for a security deposit on a better place. Until… She stopped, jaw tight. Until I figure out the next thing. That's how this works. Roman had never had to figure out the next thing. Had never worried about security deposits or childcare costs or whether working 3 jobs would eventually destroy him. His problems had always been different, bigger in scope maybe, but smaller in the way they pressed against his chest and made it hard to breathe. I sound pathetic, Lydia said into the silence. You sound strong. Strong people don't sleep in their cars pregnant and alone. Strong people survive what would break most others. You survived. She studied him over the rim of her cup, and Roman felt uncomfortably seen. What about you? What's your story? You know my story. Everyone knows. I know what people say, that you used to run half the city, that someone shot you, that your brother's taking over while you... She stopped, clearly uncertain how to finish that sentence without being cruel. While I rot in a chair and feel sorry for myself, Roman supplied. That's the short version, yeah. Do you feel sorry for yourself? The question should have been offensive. Instead, it felt like relief. Every single day, Roman admitted. I wake up and I'm still paralyzed and I hate it. Hate the chair, hate the looks, hate that my own brother is probably counting down the days until I'm weak enough that he can take everything. You think your brother shot you? No, but I think he's not particularly upset that someone did. Lydia absorbed this. Family's complicated. That's one word for it. Mine disowned me. Yours is stealing from you. Maybe we're both better off alone. Maybe. Roman turned his coffee cup in circles, watching the liquid swirl. Or maybe we're both too stubborn to admit we need people even when they disappoint us. Do I disappoint you? You showed up 20 minutes late and soaking wet to have coffee with someone you don't know. That's either very brave or very stupid. You said hopeful and stupid weren't the same thing. I'm revising my position. She laughed, actually laughed, surprised and genuine, and the sound did something to the air between them, made it lighter, made the rain outside and the weight of their respective histories feel less suffocating. They talked for 2 hours, about nothing and everything. About Danny's obsession with dinosaurs and Roman's physical therapy sessions that felt like torture designed by someone who hated him. About Lydia's favorite customer at the diner, an old man who left $5 tips and always asked about her son, and Roman's physical therapist who kept insisting he could walk again if he just tried harder. Can you? Lydia asked. Walk again? Doctors say maybe, with surgery, extensive therapy, maybe. Roman shrugged. But maybe means probably not. Means giving me false hope so I keep paying them. Or maybe means there's a chance. You an optimist? No. But I'm a mother. I have to believe in impossible things. Otherwise I'd never have survived this long. The coffee shop filled and emptied around them. Rain drummed against the windows. Roman's phone buzzed repeatedly in his pocket. Marco probably, or Teresa, or any number of people who needed things from him. He ignored it all. When Lydia finally glanced at her phone and gasped at the time, Roman felt the loss before she'd even moved. I have to pick up Danny from the sitter, she said, already gathering her things. My shift at the store starts at 3 and When can I see you again? She froze. What? I want to see you again. When are you free? I'm not. Free is a complicated concept for me. Sunday? Are you free Sunday? Lydia looked at him like he was speaking a foreign language. You want to spend your Sunday with me? And Danny, if that's okay. Why? Because you're the first person in 6 months who's made me feel like something other than a broken former criminal. Roman held her gaze. Because you're real. And I'm so tired of pretending. Her eyes went shiny. She blinked hard, fighting back whatever emotion was trying to surface. Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock. There's a park near my apartment. Nothing fancy, just swings and a sandbox. Danny likes it. Text me the address. I don't have your number. Roman pulled out his phone, opened a new contact, handed it to her. Lydia's hands shook slightly as she typed in her information. I still don't understand why you're doing this. Neither do I, but I'm tired of understanding things. Understanding hasn't made me any happier. She handed back his phone, their fingers brushing. The contact lasted maybe 2 seconds, but Roman felt it like an electric shock. Sunday, Lydia said softly. 2 o'clock. I'll be there. She left quickly after that, like staying might make her change her mind or realize this was all a mistake. Roman watched her disappear into the rain and wondered what the hell he'd just committed to. His phone showed 17 missed calls, 12 from Marco, 3 from Teresa, 2 from his lawyer. Roman ignored them all and texted his driver. The ride home should have been time to think, to plan, to consider all the ways this could go wrong. Instead, Roman found himself replaying Lydia's laugh. The way she'd looked at him when he'd called her strong. The fierce protectiveness in her voice when she'd talked about her son. She was nothing like the women he usually dated, polished, sophisticated women who understood power and knew how to wield it. Lydia didn't understand power. She'd never had any. She'd spent her entire adult life at the mercy of systems and people who didn't care whether she survived. And she'd done it anyway, had kept going, had raised a kid alone and worked 3 jobs and still found the courage to approach a stranger at a wedding. Marco was going to lose his mind. The thought made Roman smile. His brother was waiting in the penthouse when Roman arrived, somehow having acquired a key and an inflated sense of entitlement. He stood by the windows, drink in hand, perfectly positioned to radiate disapproval. "Where were you?" Marco asked without turning around. "Out." "Your phone was off." "No, I was ignoring you. There's a difference." Marco finally turned and Roman saw the carefully controlled anger in his expression. "We had a meeting with the Castellano family about the waterfront properties. You handled it. That's not the point. You should have been there. They need to see you're still what? Still relevant? Still in control? Still not completely useless?" Roman rolled past his brother toward the bar, poured himself 2 fingers of scotch despite the fact that it wasn't even 3 in the afternoon. "I'm sure you represented the family beautifully." "This isn't a joke, Roman." "I'm not laughing. You're throwing away everything we've built. Everything, Dad?" "Dad's dead." Roman turned to face his brother head on. "And what we built was a criminal empire that got me shot and paralyzed. So forgive me if I'm not particularly invested in preserving it." Marco's jaw tightened. "You're being selfish. I'm being honest. You're being distracted by some waitress who saw an opportunity and her name is Lydia. And if you mention her again in that tone, we're going to have a problem." "We already have a problem. You're compromised, making decisions based on loneliness instead of logic." "Decisions like what? Having coffee? Making a friend? Trying to remember what it feels like to be human? Decisions like exposing yourself, like giving ammunition to anyone who wants to exploit your weakness." Roman studied his brother, really studied him. Saw the ambition that had always been there, now less carefully hidden. Saw the calculation in every word, every gesture. "You think she's a threat," Roman said slowly, "or you think she's a distraction that keeps me weak enough for you to maintain control. That's paranoid. That's observant." Roman took a drink, let the scotch burn. "You've been waiting for me to break, Marco. Waiting for me to give you an excuse to take over completely. And instead, I'm getting stronger, starting to engage again. That terrifies you. You're not stronger. You're delusional. Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally seeing clearly for the first time in months." They stared at each other, years of brotherhood and rivalry and unspoken resentment crackling in the space between them. Roman thought about their father, about the way he'd pitted them against each other since childhood, always comparing, always creating competition where there should have been loyalty. "I'm meeting her again Sunday," Roman said quietly. "Lydia and her son. We're going to a park, and I don't need your permission or your approval. You need protection. Do you have any idea how vulnerable you'll be, out in public with a child? If anyone wanted to send a message, then they'll send it. I'm done living in fear, Marco. I'm done hiding. You're done being smart. I was smart for 35 years. Where did it get me? Shot, paralyzed, alone." Roman rolled toward the door. "Now I'm going to try something different. You can either support me or get out of my way." "And if I can't do either?" Roman stopped, turned back to face his brother one more time. "Then I guess we'll find out what happens when family becomes enemy." Marco didn't respond, just stood there, backlit by floor-to-ceiling windows, looking like everything their father had wanted him to be. Strong, controlled, ruthless. Everything Roman was trying to stop being. The next few days crawled by. Roman went to his physical therapy sessions and actually tried instead of just going through the motions. His therapist, a woman named Sarah who took no shit and gave less sympathy, noticed immediately. "What changed?" she asked, watching him struggle through exercises that left him shaking and nauseous. "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." "Well, whatever it is, keep doing it. You've improved more this week than in the previous 2 months combined." Roman didn't tell her about Lydia. Didn't mention that he was pushing himself because he wanted to be able to stand, even if just for a moment, next time he saw her. Didn't admit that hope was a better motivator than rage had ever been. Teresa called Friday night. "Marco says you're seeing someone," she said without preamble. "Marco needs to mind his business." "Is it serious?" "It's coffee, and we're meeting again Sunday." Teresa was quiet for a moment. He showed me her background check. Roman's hand tightened on his phone. He did what? Full investigation, financial records, employment history, everything. Roman, she's got nothing, less than nothing. Credit card debt, eviction notices from 3 years ago, no assets, no... Stop. I'm just saying you need to be careful. If she's looking for a way out of... She's not. Roman's voice came out harder than he'd intended. She's surviving. There's a difference. How do you know? Because I know what people look like when they're scheming. Lydia looks scared, looks like she can't believe anyone would choose to spend time with her. He paused. She looks like I feel. Teresa sighed. Okay. Okay? Okay. If you trust her, I trust you, but Roman, be smart about this. Marco's not wrong that you're vulnerable right now. I'm always going to be vulnerable. The chair guarantees that, so I can either hide forever or I can take some risks and see what happens. Or you could take precautions, security, background checks on anyone she associates with, normal things that would tell her I don't trust her, that I see her as a potential threat instead of... Roman stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. Instead of what? Instead of someone who makes me feel like maybe I'm worth something beyond the empire and the fear and the power. His sister was quiet for a long moment. Okay, she finally said, but I'm having security follow you Sunday, discreetly. You won't even know they're there. Teresa, non-negotiable. You want to play normal guy falling for a girl? Fine. But you're still Roman DeLuca, and people still want you dead. So you get security, or you don't go. She was right. Roman hated that she was right, but she was. Fine. Discreet. Promise. Sunday arrived cold and clear, the kind of autumn day that made the city look almost pretty despite itself. Roman dressed carefully. Jeans, a dark blue sweater, nothing that screamed wealth or danger. Just a man going to a park. The address Lydia had sent led to a neighborhood Roman wouldn't normally visit. Not dangerous exactly, but worn down, tired. The kind of place where people worked hard and still struggled. The park was small, wedged between apartment buildings, equipment old but maintained. Lydia was already there, pushing Danny on a swing. She hadn't seen him yet, and Roman took a moment to just watch her. She looked younger in daylight, hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing jeans and a jacket that had seen better years. She was laughing at something her son said, her whole face bright with it. Roman's chest felt tight. Roman! Danny spotted him first, jumping off the swing mid-arc and running over with the fearlessness only children possessed. You came! Mom said you might not, but I knew you would because you promised. And promises are important. They are, Roman agreed, catching the kid's enthusiasm despite himself. What were you swinging so high for? Trying to touch the sky. Haven't made it yet. Keep trying. That's what matters. Lydia approached more slowly, tucking hair behind her ear in that nervous gesture he was starting to recognize. Hi. Hi. They stood there, suddenly awkward, while Danny ran circles around Roman's chair making airplane noises. This is weird, right? Lydia finally said. I don't know how to do this. Do what? This. Whatever this is, dating? Hanging out? I haven't, since before Danny, I haven't. Then we'll figure it out together. Roman watched Danny discover a stick and immediately turn it into a sword. No pressure, no expectations, just being. Just being. She tested the words, seemed to like them. Okay, I can do that. They spent the afternoon doing nothing remarkable. Danny showed Roman every piece of playground equipment, narrated elaborate stories involving pirates and dinosaurs and superheroes, and asked approximately 8,000 questions about everything from wheelchairs to why the sky was blue. Lydia relaxed gradually, the tension bleeding out of her shoulders as the hours passed. She told stories about Danny's first steps, his first words, the time he'd decided to paint their entire apartment with pudding while she'd been in the shower. Roman found himself laughing more than he had in years, real laughter that came from his chest and made his face hurt. You're good with him, Lydia said, watching Roman help Danny build an elaborate stick fortress. Not everyone is. He's easy, says what he means, doesn't pretend. Unlike adults. Unlike everyone I usually deal with. When Danny finally wore himself out, they sat on a bench. Lydia on the seat, Roman beside her, watching the kid dig in the sandbox with focused intensity. "Can I ask you something?" Lydia said quietly. "Anything." "Why me? I've been trying to understand it all week. You could have anyone. Someone sophisticated and educated and—" "Fake?" Roman interrupted. "Someone who wants Roman DeLuca the Empire, not Roman DeLuca the person? I want the person." "I know. That's why you—" She looked at him then, and Roman saw tears threatening to spill. "I'm going to disappoint you. Eventually, I'm going to— So will I. Probably sooner." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. But maybe that's okay. Maybe disappointment is part of being real. Her fingers curled around his, holding on like she was afraid of falling. "I'm scared," Lydia whispered. "Me too." "What are we doing?" "I have no idea, but I don't want to stop." Danny looked up from his excavation project, saw them holding hands, and grinned. "Are you guys boyfriend and girlfriend now?" Lydia's face went red. "Danny! What? You said you liked him, and he likes you, I can tell." "It's more complicated than—" "Is it?" Roman asked, looking at Lydia instead of her son. "Does it have to be?" She stared at him, something like hope flickering across her features. "You're serious. I'm tired of being alone. You're tired of surviving. Maybe we could try something different together. I have a 5-year-old and 3 jobs and more baggage than anyone should have to carry. I have a criminal empire, a treacherous brother, and I'm paralyzed from the waist down. Your point?" She laughed, shocked, and a little broken. "We're a disaster." "Probably. This is going to end badly." "Maybe. But you still want to try." Roman squeezed her hand. "I still want to try." Danny cheered, already planning what he called their family adventures, oblivious to the complexity of what he'd just witnessed. But maybe he had it right. Maybe it could be that simple. Maybe 2 broken people could choose each other and see what happened next. The sun was setting by the time they left the park. Roman offered to drive them home. His car was warm and Danny was getting tired, and Lydia looked like she'd been on her feet for days. But she hesitated. "You don't have to see where I live. It's nothing like what you're used to." "Lydia, I'm serious. It's embarrassing." "I don't care about your apartment. I care about making sure you and Danny get home safe." She relented finally, giving the driver an address that made his eyebrows rise almost imperceptibly. Roman shot him a look that killed any commentary. The building was exactly what he'd expected. Old brick, laundromat on the ground floor like she'd mentioned, stairs steep and narrow. Lydia's apartment was on the 3rd floor. "I can't get you up there," she said, apologetic. "I know, that's okay." Danny was asleep against his mother's shoulder, worn out from hours of play. Lydia shifted his weight, preparing to carry him up alone like she always did. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for today. For everything. Thank you for giving me a reason to leave my apartment. Same time next week? How about Wednesday? Coffee again?" She smiled. Wednesday, 10 o'clock. Roman watched her disappear into her building, Danny heavy in her arms, climbing stairs he couldn't follow. His security team materialized from shadows. 2 men he hadn't noticed but who'd been there all afternoon. "Everything secure?" Roman asked. "Yes, sir. No threats observed." "Good. I want her building watched, discreetly. Make sure she's safe." "Sir, if I may, getting involved with a civilian, especially someone with a child, I didn't ask for your opinion. I asked you to keep her safe." The man nodded. "Understood." On the drive home, Roman's phone buzzed. Marco, again. He let it go to voicemail. Whatever his brother wanted could wait. For the first time in 6 months, Roman had something to look forward to. Someone who saw him as more than a broken king or a liability or a problem to be managed. He had Lydia and her impossible son, and a chance at something that looked almost like hope. It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd had yesterday, and for now, that was enough. Wednesday morning arrived with a phone call that shattered whatever peace Roman had managed to build. 3 in the morning, his phone screaming into the darkness, Marco's name flashing on the screen. "What?" Roman answered, already knowing it was bad. Nothing good happened at 3 a.m. "We have a problem. Marco's voice was tight. The Castellano deal fell through. They're backing out. Why? Because someone told them you're distracted, compromised, that the family's leadership is uncertain. Roman sat up, ignoring the sharp pull in his back. Someone? Yeah, someone, Taik. Marco paused. They also know about your waitress. Ice flooded Roman's veins. Her name is Lydia. And how do they know? How do you think? You've been seen with her, multiple times, in public, with her kid. Marco's frustration bled through the phone. I told you this would happen, told you that showing weakness, caring about someone isn't weakness. In our world? Yes, it is. And now the Castellanos think they can push us around because they think you've gone soft. Roman's hands tightened on the phone. Set up a meeting. I'll handle it. You'll handle it? You haven't been to a business meeting in months. You think rolling in there is going to set up the meeting, Marco? That's an order, not a suggestion. Silence. Then, carefully controlled. Fine. Tomorrow night, Russo's, 8 o'clock. I'll be there. Roman hung up before his brother could argue further. He sat in the darkness of his bedroom, city lights bleeding through the windows, and felt the weight of two worlds crushing against each other. He could protect his empire or protect Lydia. Probably not both. The thought of something happening to her, to Danny, because of him, made Roman's chest constrict in a way that had nothing to do with his injuries. She'd survived abandonment, homelessness, single motherhood. She didn't need to add Mafia girlfriend to that list of struggles. But he'd already made his choice on Sunday, holding her hand in that worn-down park while her son built fortresses from sticks and imagination. He'd chosen her, chosen them. Now he had to figure out how to keep them safe. Roman didn't sleep. At 6, he called his head of security, a man named Vincent, who'd been with the family since Roman's father's time. I need more men on Lydia Vale, round the clock. She doesn't see them, doesn't know they're there, but nothing happens to her or her son. Understood? Yes, sir. Should we inform her of the threat? No, she'll panic. Or worse, she'll decide I'm not worth the risk. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Sir, if I may, getting civilians involved always ends badly. Always. Maybe it's better to what? Push her away? Pretend I don't care? That ship has sailed, Vincent. She's in this now whether I like it or not. Then we do this properly. Full protection detail, background checks on everyone in her life, security assessment of her building, which, sir, is a nightmare. No cameras, multiple access points, locks that wouldn't stop a determined teenager. Fix it, whatever it costs. She'll notice upgrades to her building. Then be subtle, but keep her safe. He ended the call and stared at his phone. Their coffee date was in 4 hours. He should cancel. Should text some excuse and create distance before this got any worse. Instead, Roman called his physical therapist. I need an emergency session now. Sarah showed up at his penthouse at 7, unimpressed by the early hour or the urgency in his voice. She took one look at him and shook her head. What happened? I need to stand. Need to walk. Even if it's just a few steps with support. Roman, we've talked about this. The surgery is still... I don't care about the surgery. I care about not looking completely helpless at a business meeting tomorrow night. He met her eyes. Please. I know you can push me harder. I know there's more I could be doing. Sarah studied him for a long moment. This is about the girl. This is about me being tired of sitting down while the world happens around me. Same thing. But she pulled out her equipment anyway. Okay, we're going to hurt. A lot. And I can't promise results. I don't need promises, I need progress. The next hour was agony. Sarah pushed him through exercises that left him shaking and nauseous, forcing his body to remember patterns it had forgotten. His legs felt like dead weight, muscles atrophied from months of disuse fighting against demands they couldn't meet. Again, Sarah commanded when he wanted to stop. I can't. You can. You're stronger than you think. You're just scared of the pain. She was right. The pain was enormous. Not just physical, but emotional, each failed attempt reminding him of everything he'd lost. But underneath the pain, something else flickered. Movement. Small, almost imperceptible, but there. Did you see that? Roman gasped. I saw it. Your right quad contracted. That's good. That's progress. Can I stand? Not today, but maybe in a few weeks if you work like this every day. Sarah began packing up her equipment. But Roman, you need to manage expectations. You might regain some function, you might not, and rushing it because you want to impress someone is going to... I'm not trying to impress her, I'm trying to protect her, and I can't do that from a chair. Sarah's expression softened. The chair doesn't make you weak. Your brain does. Your attitude does. The chair is just metal and rubber. Maybe. But metal and rubber had become Roman's prison, and he was done being trapped. At 9:30, he texted Lydia. Still on for 10? Her response came immediately. Yes, Danny made you a drawing. Fair warning, it's very dinosaur heavy. Roman smiled despite everything. Can't wait. The coffee shop felt different this time. Familiar. Almost comfortable. Lydia was already there when Roman arrived, Danny coloring furiously at their table while she nursed what looked like the same hot chocolate with excessive whipped cream. Hi, she said, and her smile did things to Roman's chest that should have been illegal. Hi yourself. Danny looked up, saw Roman, and launched into an elaborate explanation of his drawing that involved time-traveling dinosaurs and robots and a complex plot Roman couldn't quite follow, but appreciated anyway. It's for you, Danny announced, thrusting the paper at Roman with the confidence of someone who'd created a masterpiece. To put on your wall. I will, thank you. Danny, what do we say? Lydia prompted gently. You're welcome. The kid beamed, then returned to his coloring like the exchange had never happened. Roman and Lydia fell into conversation easily, easier than Roman had managed with anyone in years. She told him about a difficult customer at the diner who'd left a $20 tip after Lydia had listened to her problems for 15 minutes. Incite. He told her about his physical therapy session, editing out the desperation but keeping the small victory. That's amazing, Lydia said. You must be so proud. I contracted one muscle. It's not exactly walking. It's progress. That matters. She had this way of reframing things, of seeing hope where Roman saw failure. It should have been annoying. Instead, it made him want to try harder. They'd been talking for maybe 20 minutes when Roman's phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. You can get that, Lydia said. I don't mind. It's nothing important. But the buzzing didn't stop, and finally Roman glanced at the screen. 15 missed calls from Marco, 3 from Teresa, and a text from Vincent that made his blood go cold. Situation developing, Castellanos asking questions about the Veil woman. Recommend immediate relocation to secure location. Roman's face must have changed because Lydia leaned forward, concern replacing her smile. What's wrong? Nothing. Business thing. You're lying. You got really pale really fast. He'd never been good at lying to people who actually paid attention. It's complicated. Is it about me? Roman wanted to deny it, wanted to protect her from the truth a little longer, but she deserved honesty, even when it was ugly. Yes. Lydia sat back, something crumbling in her expression. I knew this was too good to be true. It's not... Lydia, listen to me. No, I get it. Your world and mine don't mix. I was stupid to think, stop. Roman reached across the table, caught her hand before she could pull away. This isn't about our worlds not mixing. This is about some business associates finding out you exist and trying to use that information. Fear flickered across her face. Use it how? As leverage, as a pressure point, as... He stopped, not wanting to say the word that would make this real. As a way to hurt you. Lydia finished the sentence herself, voice small. By hurting me, or Danny. I won't let that happen. How can you stop it? You don't even know these people. What they're capable of, I know exactly what they're capable of. I used to do business with them. Roman's jaw tightened, which is why I know how to handle this. Lydia pulled her hand away, wrapping both arms around herself like she was cold. Maybe we should stop. This, whatever this is, before someone gets hurt. Is that what you want? What I want doesn't matter. What's safe matters. What's right for Danny matters. And you think walking away from me is right for Danny? She flinched. I think protecting him from danger is right for Danny. And your danger. Your whole life is danger. Roman wanted to argue, wanted to promise he could keep them safe. But he'd made promises before that bullets had rendered meaningless. You're right, he said quietly. Being with me puts you at risk.
So I'll understand if you want to end this now, before it gets worse. Lydia's eyes went shiny. Do you want to end it? No, but what I want isn't fair to you or your son. They sat there in terrible silence while Danny colored, oblivious to the way his world was about to shift again. Around them, the coffee shop buzzed with normal conversations, normal problems, normal lives that didn't include death threats and criminal empires. I don't want to end it either, Lydia finally whispered. But I'm so scared. Then let me protect you. Let me put security on you and Danny. Let me... Security? Her voice rose slightly. Like bodyguards? Like, Roman, I can't live like that. I can't have my son grow up thinking he needs armed men following him to kindergarten. Better that than... Than what? Than him getting caught in crossfire because his mom fell for the wrong guy? Tears spilled over now, running down her cheeks faster than she could wipe them away. I've made so many mistakes, but I've always kept Danny safe. Always. And now nothing changes. We're careful. We're smart. But we don't let fear win. Fear keeps us alive. Fear keeps us alone. Roman leaned forward, lowering his voice. I spent 6 months afraid of being seen, afraid of being weak, afraid of caring about anything because losing it would hurt too much. And all that fear did was make me miserable. At least you were safe. Was I? Someone still shot me, Lydia. All my caution, all my security, all my careful control. It didn't stop 3 bullets from destroying my life. She hiccuped, trying to control her breathing. So what are you saying? That we should just ignore the danger? I'm saying we acknowledge it, but don't let it control us. I'm saying I have resources and people who can keep you safe. I'm saying... Roman stopped, realizing what he was about to admit. I'm saying I care about you too much to walk away just because it's complicated. Lydia stared at him. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brave and kind and you've survived things that would have broken most people. I know your son makes me laugh in a way I haven't in years. I know when I'm with you, I feel like maybe I'm not completely ruined. You're not ruined. Then let me prove it. Let me show you that I can do this, protect you and care about you at the same time. She bit her lip, clearly torn. What does protection even look like? Security watching your building, driving you to work when possible, changing your routine so you're less predictable. Small things that won't disrupt your life but will make you harder to target. And if that's not enough, Roman met her eyes. Then we escalate. But I promise you, Lydia, I will not let anything happen to you or Danny. I don't care what it costs. That's what I'm afraid of, the cost. She wiped her face, trying to compose herself. What if the cost is you? What if trying to protect me gets you hurt worse? Or then that's my choice to make. It's not just your choice. It affects all of us. Lydia glanced at Danny, who'd finally noticed his mother was crying and had gone very still, crayons forgotten. I need time to think. It's too much too fast. Roman wanted to push, wanted to make her understand that waiting meant more danger, not less. But he also knew that pushing someone who was already terrified would only drive her away faster. Okay, take the time you need, but in the meantime, let me at least put basic security in place, just in case. Without asking me. I'm asking now. She laughed, wet and broken. Some choice. Say yes or feel guilty if something happens. Say yes or be practical about the fact that you've been dragged into something dangerous through no fault of your own. Roman softened his voice. I'm not trying to control you, Lydia. I'm trying to keep you alive. The bluntness of it seemed to shake something loose. She nodded, defeated. Okay, basic security, but nothing that scares Danny. Nothing that scares Danny, Roman agreed, though he had no idea how to fulfill that promise. Their coffee date ended awkwardly, all the ease from earlier shattered. Lydia gathered Danny, who kept asking why Mommy was sad, and left without making plans to meet again. Roman sat alone in the coffee shop and wondered if he'd just destroyed the best thing that had happened to him in years. His phone buzzed. Marco. Again. What? You done playing house? Because we have actual problems that need your attention. I'm aware. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're so busy chasing tail that you've forgotten we have a business to run. Roman's temper, already frayed, snapped. Careful, Marco.
You're about 2 seconds away from finding out exactly how much authority I still have. Authority means nothing if you're too distracted to use it. Set up the meeting with the Castellanos tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, and make sure they know I'll be there. You sure that's wise? Walking into a room full of people who think you're weak? I'm not walking, I'm rolling, but I'm showing up, which is more than they expected. Roman ended the call before Marco could respond. The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls and preparations. Vincent briefed him on security arrangements, discrete teams positioned around Lydia's building, her workplace, Danny's daycare. They'd identified 3 potential vulnerabilities and were working to address them. She's not going to like this, Vincent warned. Civilians never do. She doesn't have to like it. She just has to be safe. Teresa called that evening, her voice tight with worry. Marco said you're going to the Castellano meeting. I am. Roman, they're going to test you, push you, try to see if you're really still in control or if Marco's their new point of contact. Let them try. And the girl? Marco said she was crying in the coffee shop. Her name is Lydia, and yes, she was upset, because I told her the truth about what dating me means. Which is? Danger, constant threat, security details and restricted movement, and never being sure if someone wants to hurt her to get to me. Teresa sighed. And she's still willing to try? She's thinking about it. Is she worth it? Worth all this risk and complication? Roman thought about Lydia's laugh, about Danny's dinosaur drawing currently folded in his jacket pocket, about the way she looked at him like he was just Roman, not Roman DeLuca the criminal, the cripple, the cautionary tale. Yes, he said, she's worth it. Then fight for her. But Roman, don't lose yourself in the process. You're still the head of this family, still responsible for hundreds of people who depend on you. Don't forget that while you're playing hero. I'm not playing anything. I'm trying to be better than what Dad made us. Dad made us survivors. Dad made us predators. There's a difference. Teresa was quiet for a moment. Just be careful tomorrow night. The Castellanos aren't known for their patience or mercy. Neither am I. The next evening, Roman dressed with more care than he had in months. Dark suit, crisp shirt, cufflinks that had been his father's. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw someone trying very hard to appear strong while feeling anything but. His hand shook as he transferred to his chair. Nerves or muscle fatigue, he couldn't tell. It didn't matter. He had to do this. Russo's was the kind of restaurant where deals happened in back rooms and nobody questioned the security standing outside. Roman arrived exactly on time, Vincent and 2 other men flanking him like an honor guard or a warning. Marco was already there, looking smug and expensive at the bar. Didn't think you'd actually show. I said I would. Saying and doing are different things lately. Roman ignored him, rolling toward the private room where the Castellanos waited. 3 men, Dominic, the patriarch, and his 2 sons, Anthony and Michael. Old money, old power, and old grudges that went back generations. They all stood when Roman entered, respectful or performative, hard to tell. Roman, Dominic said, extending a hand. Good to see you. Wish I could say the same. Roman shook his hand with more force than necessary. Let's skip the pretense. You're backing out of our deal. I want to know why. Dominic's smile didn't reach his eyes. Business is business. Circumstances change. What circumstances? Leadership questions. Concerns about stability. My leadership hasn't changed. Hasn't it? Anthony leaned back in his chair, casual arrogance oozing from every pore. Word is you're distracted, making questionable personal choices, getting soft. Roman felt Marco tense beside him, but ignored his brother. Soft? Because I have a personal life? Because you have a liability, Michael corrected. A single mother with a kid who lives in a building with no security and works 3 jobs where anyone could grab her. That's not having a personal life. That's painting a target on your back. Ice flooded Roman's veins. You threatening her? Stating facts. In our business, facts matter. In our business, respect matters more. And right now, you're showing me none. Dominic raised a hand, silencing his sons. No one's threatening anyone. We're simply pointing out vulnerabilities. You understand, we need to know our partners are focused, committed, not compromised by emotional entanglements. My focus hasn't wavered. My commitment to our deal stands. What I do in my personal time is irrelevant. Is it? Anthony pulled out his phone, slid it across the table. Is this irrelevant? Roman looked at the screen and felt his world tilt. Photos. Dozens of them. Lydia leaving her building. Danny at daycare. Lydia and Roman at the coffee shop. All time stamped from the last week. You had them followed. Roman's voice came out deadly quiet. We did our homework, like any good businessmen. Anthony smiled. She's pretty. The kid's cute. Be a shame if something happened to them. Roman's hands curled into fists on the armrests of his chair. Rage, hot and consuming, flooded every nerve. But underneath the rage, calculation. These men were testing him, pushing to see if he'd break. He couldn't break.
Here's what's going to happen, Roman said, each word precise. You're going to honor our original deal. Same terms, same timeline. And you're going to forget Lydia Vale and her son exist. Or what? Michael challenged. You'll roll over us. You can't even walk, Roman. What leverage do you think you have? The same leverage I've always had, the same reputation that made your father shake my hand with respect. Roman met each of their eyes in turn. I may be in a chair, but I still control half this city. I still have connections and resources and people who'll do what I ask without question. So before you mistake mobility for power, remember who you're talking to. Big words from shut up. Dominic cut off his son, studying Roman with new calculation. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Touch her or her son, and I'll burn your entire operation to the ground. I'll destroy everything your family has built over 3 generations, and I'll do it from this chair. The room went silent. Roman could feel Marco's shock radiating from beside him, could see Vincent's hand move incrementally closer to his weapon. Finally, Dominic laughed. There he is. I was starting to think the Roman DeLuca I knew had died in that warehouse. He got shot. He got smarter. He didn't die. Smart enough to know when he's being played? Smart enough to know when I'm being tested. Roman leaned forward slightly. So tell me, is this about the deal falling through, or was this whole thing designed to see if I still have teeth? Dominic's smile widened. Maybe both. Maybe we needed to know if you were still worth our investment, if you'd protect what's yours. And? And you just answered that question. Dominic extended his hand again. The deal's still on. Original terms. Roman didn't move. And Lydia? Off limits. You have my word. What you do in your personal life is your business, as long as it doesn't interfere with ours. It won't. They shook on it, the gesture carrying more weight than any contract. Roman left Russo's with his empire intact and his enemies warned, but the victory felt hollow, because they knew about Lydia now, really knew. Had photos and schedules and enough information to hurt her if they ever chose to. In the car, Marco exploded. What the hell was that? That was me handling business. That was you threatening war over a woman you barely know. That was me drawing a line. Roman turned to face his brother. And if you ever disrespect her again, I'll draw another line. Through you. Marco stared at him, something like fear flickering in his eyes. You've changed. Good. I was tired of being the old version. He had Vincent take him to Lydia's building instead of home. It was late, almost 11, but light still glowed in her third-floor window. Roman pulled out his phone, texted, I'm downstairs, can we talk? The response took 5 minutes. It's late. I know, but it's important, please. Another long pause. Then, give me 5 minutes. She came down wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, hair messy, no makeup. She looked tired and young and scared. What happened? She asked, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. I had a meeting tonight with the people who were asking questions about you. Fear flashed across her face. And? And I made it very clear that you're off limits, that anyone who touches you or Danny answers to me. That's supposed to make me feel better? That you threatened people on my behalf? It's supposed to make you feel safe. Safe. She laughed, but it was bitter. Roman, I don't feel safe. I feel terrified. I feel like I've been pulled into something I don't understand and can't control. And the worst part is, her voice broke. The worst part is, I still don't want to walk away from you. Roman's chest tightened. Then don't.
It's not that simple. It is. You decide if I'm worth the risk, if what we have is worth fighting for. And if I decide it's not, if I decide protecting my son is more important than whatever this is, then I'll respect that. I'll step back. I'll make sure you're still protected, but I won't push. Lydia wiped at her eyes. Why? Why would you still protect me if I walk away? Because you got pulled into this mess because of me. And because Roman stopped, surprised by what he was about to say. Because even if you leave, I'll still care what happens to you. She stared at him, and in that moment Roman saw her choice forming, saw the exact second she decided to be brave instead of safe. I'm not leaving, Lydia said quietly. I'm scared out of my mind and I don't know what I'm doing, and this is probably the stupidest decision I've ever made, but I'm not leaving. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Roman felt something unlock in his chest. Okay, then we do this right. No more secrets. No more pretending the danger doesn't exist. We're smart, and we're careful, and we fight like hell to make this work. We fight like hell, Lydia agreed. Her smile was shaky but real. When do we start? Now, because there's a business dinner in 2 days, and I need you there with me. Her eyes went wide. What? These people need to see you're not just some secret I'm hiding. They need to see you're important to me. Real. Roman, I don't know how to. You know how to be yourself. That's all I need. Myself doesn't belong at fancy business dinners. Neither do I anymore. But we'll figure it out together. He reached for her hand. What do you say? Want to terrify some criminals with me? Lydia laughed, surprised and a little hysterical. That's the weirdest invitation I've ever received. Is that a yes? She looked at him for a long moment. Then, with a breath that sounded like jumping off a cliff, she nodded. Yes, but you're buying me a dress because I own nothing appropriate. Done. And I need to warn you, I'm probably going to say something awkward and embarrassing. Good. They could use some awkward and embarrassing in their lives. She squeezed his hand, still scared but holding on anyway. And Roman realized that was what courage looked like. Not fearlessness, just choosing to stay despite the fear. They stood there in the cold until Lydia started shivering, and Roman insisted she go back inside. He watched her climb those 3 flights of stairs, still couldn't follow, probably never would, and felt the weight of what he'd just committed to. He'd drawn a line, made enemies reconsider, protected something precious. Now he just had to figure out how to keep her safe long enough to see where this thing between them could go. Because losing her now would hurt worse than bullets ever had. The dress arrived the next morning in a box that cost more than Lydia's monthly rent. She stared at it through tissue paper, deep emerald silk that caught the light like water, and felt panic claw up her throat. I can't wear this, she told Roman over the phone, Danny chattering about dinosaurs in the background. It's too much, too expensive, too everything. It's a dress. You put it on, you show up, you let me handle the rest. Roman, these people are going to see right through me. They're going to know I don't belong and good. Let them know. Let them see you're not playing their games. His voice softened. Lydia, I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm asking you to stand next to me and be exactly who you are. A terrified single mother who's way out of her depth. A woman who's survived things most of them can't imagine. A woman who makes me want to be better than what I was. He paused. Trust me. Please. She wanted to believe this could work, but trust had cost her everything once before, and the scar tissue hadn't fully healed. Okay, she finally said, but if this goes badly, I'm blaming you. Fair enough. The dinner was at the Meridian, the kind of restaurant where reservations required 6 months' notice and connections that couldn't be bought. Teresa had arranged everything, including a babysitter for Danny that Lydia had vetted 3 times despite Vincent's assurances the woman was former Secret Service. He'll be fine, Roman said when his car picked her up that evening. Then he saw her and went very still. You look ridiculous? Lydia smoothed the dress nervously. Like I'm playing dress-up? Beautiful. You look beautiful. She flushed, unused to compliments that sounded genuine. Roman wore a dark suit that probably cost more than her car had, back when she'd had a car. Together they looked almost believable, almost like they belonged to the same world. "Who's going to be there?" Lydia asked as the car pulled into traffic. "The Castellanos, some other associates, people who need to see that I'm still in control." Roman's jaw tightened. "And Marco, your brother?" "Unfortunately. He doesn't like me. He doesn't like anything that might interfere with his plans. That's not about you." But it felt personal. Felt like every dismissive look she'd gotten from people who'd judged her for being young and pregnant and alone. Like every social worker who'd assumed she was incompetent. Like every parent at Danny's daycare who'd looked at her worn clothes and pitied her son. The Meridian was everything Lydia had expected. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, waiters who moved like ghosts. She felt eyes on her immediately, assessing, judging, finding her wanting. "Breathe," Roman murmured. "Just breathe." Teresa met them at the entrance, elegant in black, her smile warm, but her eyes sharp. "Lydia, you look lovely. Thank you for arranging the sitter." "Danny's in good hands." Vincent personally vetted her credentials. Teresa turned to Roman. "Marco's already at the table, with opinions." "Of course he is." They entered the private dining room where 10 people sat around an obscenely large table. Conversation stopped. Every eye turned toward them. Toward Lydia specifically, with varying degrees of curiosity and calculation. Dominic Castellano rose first, extending a hand to Roman, then turning to Lydia with something that might have been respect. "Miss Vale, pleasure to meet you properly." "Mr. Castellano." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Please, Dominic. Anyone important to Roman is worth knowing." Marco stood last, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Brother, and the famous Lydia, finally joining us for business." "This is personal, not business," Roman said flatly. "Is there a difference anymore?" The tension could have been cut with a knife. Lydia felt herself shrinking, trying to take up less space, less attention. Then Roman's hand found hers under the table and squeezed once, gentle pressure that said, "I'm here." She squeezed back and stopped shrinking. Dinner began with the kind of small talk that sounded pleasant but carried undertones Lydia couldn't quite decode. Talk of shipping routes and real estate investments and political connections. She stayed quiet, listening, trying to map the dynamics. Anthony Castellano sat across from her, studying her with open curiosity. "So Lydia, what do you do?" "I work 3 jobs, waitressing, grocery store, cleaning offices." 3 jobs. He sounded impressed or condescending. She couldn't tell. "That's ambitious. That's survival. There's a difference." "I imagine there is." He took a sip of wine that probably cost more than her weekly groceries. "Must be quite a change being here with us." "It is." "Overwhelming?" "Honestly, yes." Lydia met his eyes. "But I've been overwhelmed before. You adapt." Something shifted in Anthony's expression. "How'd you and Roman meet?" Before Lydia could answer, Marco cut in. "At a wedding where she was working." The implication hung there, that she'd been hired help who'd gotten lucky, caught the eye of someone important. Lydia felt heat creep up her neck. "Actually," Roman said, voice dangerously quiet, "Lydia approached me because she saw someone sitting alone and thought that was wrong. She didn't know who I was. Didn't care about my last name or my money. She just saw someone who looked lonely and decided to be kind." "How refreshing," Marco drawled. "Kindness. What a novel concept." "It is for you, isn't it?" The brothers stared at each other, years of resentment crackling between them. Teresa cleared her throat, changing the subject smoothly to upcoming charity galas and business expansions. Lydia tried to follow the conversation but felt increasingly out of place. These people spoke in code, referenced things she didn't understand, operated in a world where power was currency and vulnerability was weakness. Then Michael Castellano asked her about Danny. "Your son, Daniel, right? How old?" 5. He turned 6 in March. "Must be hard, raising him alone while working 3 jobs." Everyone was watching her now, waiting to see if she'd crumble under scrutiny. "It's the hardest thing I've ever done," Lydia said honestly, "but it's also the best thing. He's everything. Every struggle, every sacrifice. It's worth it when he looks at me like I'm his whole world." "His father's not involved?"
This from Marco, needling. No, his father made it very clear he didn't want to be. That must have been difficult, being abandoned like that. Roman's hand tightened on hers, warning in the gesture. But Lydia didn't need protecting from the truth. It was devastating, she said. I thought I knew him, thought we'd build a life together. Instead, he handed me cash for an abortion and told me to disappear. She looked directly at Marco. But I didn't disappear. I survived. And I built a life for my son that's small, but it's ours and it's real. Silence fell around the table. Even Marco seemed taken aback by her directness. Then Dominic started laughing. I like her. She's got spine. More than most, Teresa agreed, shooting Lydia a look that might have been approval. The dinner continued, tension easing incrementally. People asked Lydia questions, real questions, not tests, about Danny, about her work, about her life. She answered honestly, without embellishment, and something about that honesty seemed to disarm them. During dessert, while conversation splintered into smaller groups, Marco leaned across the table toward Lydia. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Lydia admitted. You know what you've gotten yourself into? The kind of life Roman lives? I'm learning. And you're okay with it? The danger? The complications? Lydia glanced at Roman, deep in conversation with Dominic about something that looked serious. I'm not okay with any of it, but I'm here anyway. Why? Because he makes me feel like I matter, like I'm worth something beyond how useful I am. She met Marco's eyes. When's the last time someone made you feel that way? Something flickered in Marco's expression. Pain, maybe, or recognition. That's not how our world works. Maybe it should be. He studied her for a long moment. You're going to get hurt, both of you. Probably, but at least we'll have tried. Marco shook his head, something almost like respect in the gesture. I still think this is a mistake, but I can see why he likes you. Because I'm stupid enough to care about him? Because you're honest enough to admit it. The dinner ended 2 hours later with handshakes and promises, and the sense that something had shifted. As they left, Dominic pulled Roman aside while Teresa walked Lydia to the car. You did well tonight, Teresa said. Better than most. I felt like an imposter. Everyone in that room is an imposter. You were just honest about it. Teresa paused at the car. Roman's different with you. Lighter. More like the person he was before our father turned him into. What he became. What did he become? Exactly what Dad wanted. Ruthless. Controlled. Empty. Teresa's voice went soft. You're giving him permission to be something else. Don't underestimate how rare that is. Roman joined them then, tension in his shoulders easing when he saw Lydia. Ready to go? More than ready. The drive back to her apartment was quiet. Lydia watched the city blur past, processing everything that had happened, everything she'd learned. You okay? Roman asked finally. I don't know. That was a lot. Too much? Maybe, but I survived it. She looked at him. Your brother really hates me. My brother hates anything that threatens his control. You threaten his control over me. Because you care about me. Yes. The simple admission made Lydia's chest tight. This is real, isn't it? You're not just using me to prove something to them? Roman looked genuinely hurt. Is that what you think? I think I've been used before. I think powerful men don't usually notice women like me unless they want something. She twisted her hands together. I think I'm terrified this is all going to fall apart, and I'm going to get my heart broken again. I can't promise that won't happen. I can't promise this doesn't end badly. Roman reached for her hand, but I can promise I'm not using you. What I feel, it's real, messy and complicated and probably a terrible idea, but real. What do you feel? He looked at her for a long moment, something vulnerable in his expression. Like maybe I'm not completely lost. Like maybe there's a version of me that's worth saving. You were always worth saving. Was I? I've done terrible things, Lydia. Things you don't know about. Things that happened before I knew you. Things that don't change the person you're trying to become. She squeezed his hand. I'm not naive. I know you have a past. But I care about who you are now, who you're choosing to be. And who's that? Someone brave enough to change.
Someone willing to fight for what matters. She smiled. Someone who makes me believe in impossible things. Roman pulled her close as the car would allow, and kissed her forehead. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. The real me. Not the chair or the empire or the reputation. Just me. They arrived at her building too soon. Roman insisted on his security walking her up, despite her protests that it was overkill. At her door, she turned back to him, still in the car, still unable to follow her up those narrow stairs. Same time next week? She asked. Every week. As many weeks as you'll give me. Lydia went inside and found Danny asleep on the couch, the babysitter reading a book nearby. Everything was normal, safe, exactly as she'd left it. But she'd changed. In the space of a few hours, she'd walked into a world that should have terrified her and come out standing. She'd faced people who could destroy her with a word and refused to shrink, because Roman had believed she could. The next morning brought a crisis Lydia hadn't anticipated. She woke to 17 missed calls from her boss at the diner and a text that made her stomach drop. Need to talk. Come in early. She arrived to find Frank, her manager for 3 years, looking uncomfortable behind the counter. Lydia, thanks for coming in. What's wrong? Look, I'm just going to say it. You can't work here anymore. The world tilted. What? Why? I've never missed a shift. I'm always on time. Customers love me. It's not about your work. It's about... Frank sighed. Some guys came by yesterday, asked questions about you, made it very clear they'd be unhappy if we kept you employed. Who? What guys? Didn't leave names, but they were professional, scary professional. He looked genuinely apologetic. I can't afford trouble, Lydia. I've got a family. This place is all I have. So you're firing me because someone threatened you? I'm protecting myself. I'm sorry. Lydia felt tears threaten but refused to let them fall. I need this job. I have a son. I can't just... I know. I'm sorry. Really. Frank handed her an envelope. 2 weeks severance. It's the best I can do. She took the envelope with numb fingers and left. Stood outside the diner where she'd worked breakfast shifts for 3 years and felt her carefully constructed life crumble. This was what being with Roman meant. This was the cost. Her phone rang. Roman's name on the screen. She almost didn't answer. Hey, she said, voice flat. What's wrong? I just got fired. From the diner. Because apparently being associated with you makes me unemployable. Roman was silent for a moment. I'll fix this. How? You can't force them to hire me back. You can't... I'll fix this, he repeated. Where are you? Outside the diner. About to figure out how I'm going to pay rent next month. Stay there. I'm coming to you. Roman, you can't just... But he'd already hung up. He arrived 15 minutes later, rolling up with Vincent and an expression that would have frightened her if she wasn't already numb. Get in the car. I need to pick up Danny from... Vincent will get Danny. You're coming with me. Where? To fix this. Roman took her to a small cafe she'd never noticed before. Nothing fancy, just clean and warm with good coffee and better pastries. A woman about Lydia's age greeted them, surprised but pleased to see Roman. Mr. DeLuca, didn't expect you today. Maria, this is Lydia. She needs a job. You need someone who knows customer service and won't steal from you. Roman looked between them. Seems like a good match. Maria studied Lydia with sharp eyes. You have experience? 3 years waitressing. I'm good with people. I show up on time. I don't cause drama. Why'd you leave your last job? Lydia glanced at Roman, uncertain how much to share. He nodded slightly, permission or encouragement, she wasn't sure. I was fired because someone didn't like that I was dating him. Lydia gestured at Roman. They threatened my boss. He folded. And you think working here would be different? I own this building, Roman said quietly. And the one next to it, and the one across the street. Anyone who has a problem with Lydia working here will have a much bigger problem with me. Maria absorbed this, then turned back to Lydia. Breakfast and lunch shift, Tuesday through Saturday, 15 an hour plus tips. You start tomorrow. That's... Lydia did the math in her head. More money than the diner had paid. Better hours. That's generous? That's fair. You do good work. You get paid fair. Maria extended her hand. Deal? Deal. Outside, Lydia turned to Roman. You can't just solve all my problems by throwing money at them. I'm not throwing money. I'm using resources I have to help someone who matters to me. He caught her expression. What? This is what your life is like, isn't it? Problems appear and you just fix them. Make calls, move pieces around. Usually, yes. That's not real life. Real life is struggling and failing and figuring things out without a safety net. Why? Roman's voice sharpened. Why does real life have to mean suffering? Why can't it mean accepting help when someone offers it? Because accepting help means owing people. And I've spent 5 years of not owing anyone anything. You don't owe me. I'm choosing to help because I want to, because seeing you stressed destroys me. He reached for her hand. Let me help, please. Lydia wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain her independence, her pride, all the walls she'd built to protect herself. But she was tired. So tired of struggling alone. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Vincent brought Danny to them, the kid chattering about the cool car he'd gotten to ride in. He hugged Lydia like he'd been gone for weeks instead of an hour, all warm weight and unconditional love. Mom, can Roman come to dinner? I made spaghetti last night with the babysitter, and there's leftovers, and it's really good, even though some of it got on the ceiling. Lydia laughed despite everything. How did spaghetti get on the ceiling? Science experiment. That's not... She caught Roman's expression, saw something hungry there. Not for food. For this, for normal domesticity, for dinner with a kid who got sauce on the ceiling, for being included in the small, beautiful chaos of their life. Yes. Roman can come to dinner. Yes! Danny pumped his fist, already planning what they'd do after eating. Her apartment had never felt smaller than it did with Roman's wheelchair taking up space in the narrow entryway. He looked around, taking in the secondhand furniture, the drawings taped to walls, the organized chaos of a home that was small but loved. It's not much, Lydia started. It's perfect. You're humoring me. I'm being honest. This is... He gestured vaguely. Real, lived in. My penthouse is 3,000 square feet of nothing. This is 500 square feet of everything. Danny insisted on showing Roman every toy, every drawing, every treasure he'd collected. Roman listened to all of it with attention that made Lydia's chest ache. When had anyone listened to her son like this? When had anyone cared about his dinosaur collection or his theories about time travel? Dinner was chaos. The spaghetti was overcooked and underseasoned, and Danny talked with his mouth full, and Lydia burned the garlic bread. It was the best meal Roman had eaten in months. This is nice, he said during a rare moment when Danny paused for breath. It's a disaster. It's life. Real life. He looked at her across the cluttered table. Thank you for letting me be part of it. After dinner, Danny crashed hard. Full of pasta and conversation, he fell asleep on the couch mid-sentence about tyrannosaurs. Lydia carried him to his small bedroom, tucking him in with practiced efficiency. When she returned, Roman was looking at the drawings on her refrigerator. Family portraits where Danny had drawn 3 stick figures, one labeled Mom, one labeled Danny, and a recent edition labeled Roman with what appeared to be wheels. He added you, Lydia said softly. Last week. Said we were a family now. Are we? I don't know. Are we? Roman turned to face her. I want to be. Is that crazy? We've known each other a month. It's too fast, too soon. But I want... He stopped, struggling with words. I want this. You and Danny and spaghetti on the ceiling. I want to matter to someone beyond what I can do for them. You matter to us. Too much, probably. Lydia moved closer. I'm scared, Roman. Scared of how fast this is happening. Scared of what it means. Scared that I'm going to wake up and you'll realize I'm not worth all this trouble. You're worth everything. He pulled her down to eye level, their faces inches apart. And I'm terrified too. Terrified I'm going to hurt you. That my world is going to swallow you whole. That I'll lose you the same way I've lost everything else I cared about. So what do? We stay. We fight. We choose each other even when it's hard. Roman cupped her face gently. Can you do that? Lydia thought about everything that had happened, the threats, the lost job, the dinner with criminals, the constant fear that something would go wrong. Then she thought about Danny's laugh when Roman played with him, about the way Roman looked at her like she was precious, about feeling seen for the first time in years.
Yes, she said. I can do that. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something that might break. And maybe she was. Maybe they both were. But broken things could still choose each other, could still build something beautiful from the pieces. Roman left late, after Danny had been sleeping for hours, and Lydia had walked him down to his car. In the street, under fluorescent lights that made everything look harsh, he took her hand one more time. "Thank you," he said. "For terrible spaghetti?" "For letting me in, for seeing past all the everything, for making me believe I'm more than what I was." "You are more. You've always been more. You just needed someone to remind you." He kissed her goodnight, longer this time, deeper, with a promise of things unsaid, and left. Lydia climbed back up to her apartment, tired and scared and hopeful all at once. She checked on Danny, still sprawled across his bed with dinosaurs clutched in both hands, and felt the weight of what she'd committed to. She was dating a man whose brother hated her, a man whose business associates had gotten her fired, a man who lived in a world so different from hers they might as well be different species. But he'd sat at her cluttered table and listened to her son talk about dinosaurs with genuine interest. He'd helped her find a job without making her feel weak for needing help. He'd looked at her tiny apartment like it was a palace. Maybe that was enough. Maybe choosing each other was enough. Lydia fell asleep that night thinking about emerald dresses and business dinners, and a future that terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. Tomorrow she'd start a new job. Tomorrow she'd navigate this impossible relationship one day at a time. Tomorrow she'd keep choosing Roman despite every logical reason not to. But tonight she'd just sleep and dream of a man in a wheelchair who'd looked at her like she hung the moon. That was enough for now, more than enough. 3 months passed in a blur of new routines and small miracles. Lydia settled into her job at Maria's cafe, where the tips were good and nobody asked questions about who she was dating. Danny started kindergarten and came home every day with stories about his new friends and artwork that covered their refrigerator in layers. Roman became a fixture in their lives. Sunday afternoons at the park, Wednesday dinners at Lydia's apartment, stolen moments whenever their complicated schedules aligned. It was almost normal, almost safe, which was why Roman should have seen the disaster coming. He was in physical therapy when his phone exploded with calls. Sarah had him on parallel bars, sweat pouring down his face as he tried to hold his weight for 30 seconds. His legs shook violently, muscles screaming, but he'd made it to 28 seconds before his phone started buzzing across the mat. "Ignore it," Sarah commanded. Roman tried, made it to 31 seconds before his legs gave out and he crashed back into his chair, gasping. "Better," Sarah said, making notes. "You're getting stronger." The phone kept buzzing. Roman checked it and felt ice flood his veins. Teresa, Marco, Vincent, Dominic Castellano, all within the last 3 minutes. "I need to take this." "Roman," but he was already calling Teresa back. She answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" "Physical therapy. What's wrong?" Marco made a move, a big one. Her voice was tight with something Roman couldn't identify. "He's calling a family meeting, tonight. Says it's about leadership succession and he has evidence you're unfit to continue." "Evidence of what?" "I don't know yet, but Roman, he's been planning this. Whatever he has, it's going to be bad." Roman's mind raced. "The meeting's at the estate?" 7 o'clock. He's invited everyone, all the families, all our associates." Teresa paused. "He's making this public. Whatever happens tonight determines who runs things going forward." "I'll be there." He hung up and immediately called Lydia. She answered on the third ring, slightly breathless. "Hey, I'm on my break, but it's quick. I need you to take Danny and leave the city, tonight." Silence. Then, carefully, "What happened?" "Marco's making his move. I don't know what he's planning, but I need you safe. Vincent will pick you up in an hour. He'll take you somewhere secure until this is over." "Roman, I'm not running. We talked about this." "That was before my brother decided to declare war. Lydia, please, for Danny. Just for a few days until I handle this." "Handle it how?" "I don't know yet, but I can't think clearly if I'm worried about you getting caught in the crossfire." He heard her exhale, heard the sound of the cafe in the background.
normal life continuing while his was imploding. Okay, but Roman, be careful. Whatever Marco has planned, I know. I will. And when this is over, you come find us. You don't disappear into that world and forget. I could never forget you, either of you. Promise? Promise. He ended the call and sat there, dripping sweat, phone heavy in his hand. Sarah watched him with the expression of someone who'd seen too much. You okay? No, but I will be. Roman grabbed a towel, wiped his face. How fast can I learn to stand without support? Roman, we've talked about realistic timelines. How fast? She studied him. If you're willing to hurt, if you push past every safety limit, maybe a week, maybe 2. But the risk of permanent damage is less important than being able to stand on my own 2 feet when I face my brother tonight. Roman met her eyes. I need this, Sarah. I need to look him in the eye without looking up. Then we work. Now. Hard as you can take it. They worked for 3 more hours. Roman pushed past pain into something worse, agony that made him want to vomit, want to quit, want to accept that this was impossible. But every time he wanted to stop, he thought about Marco's smug face, about Lydia and Danny somewhere safe but temporary, about the empire his father had built that was being stolen by someone who'd never earned it. By the time Sarah called it, Roman could hold himself upright on the parallel bars for almost 2 minutes. His legs shook constantly and the pain was spectacular, but he was standing. You're going to regret this tomorrow, Sarah warned. I'll regret not trying more. At 5 o'clock, Roman went home and dressed with more care than he'd given anything in months. Dark suit, his father's watch, cufflinks that had been a gift when he'd made his first major deal. Armor disguised his clothing. Teresa arrived at 6, looking worried and beautiful and ready for battle in her own way. You sure about this? She asked. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Marco has something. I don't know what, but he's too confident, too sure this is going to work. Then we'll find out what it is and deal with it. And if we can't, if whatever he has is, then I lose everything. Roman looked at his sister. But at least I'll lose it fighting instead of hiding. They arrived at the family estate just before 7. The house where Roman had grown up, massive and cold and filled with memories of a father who'd pitted his sons against each other for sport. Cars lined the circular drive. Everyone had come to watch the execution. Vincent met them at the entrance. Security's tight. Marco brought his own people. This could get ugly. It's already ugly. We're just making it official. The great room was packed. Roman recognized faces from every major family in the city. The Castellanos, the Russos, the Kowalskis, associates and rivals, and people who'd been waiting for this moment since the shooting, all here to witness who would rise and who would fall. Marco stood at the head of the room, expensive suit and practiced smile, looking like everything their father had wanted him to be. He saw Roman enter and his smile widened. Brother, glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it. Roman rolled to the front, positioning himself where everyone could see. Let's get this over with. Always so impatient, Marco gestured to the assembled crowd. Everyone here knows why we've gathered. Our family needs strong leadership, decisive leadership, leadership that isn't compromised by external factors. Say what you mean, Marco. Stop dancing. Fine, you're not fit to lead anymore. You're distracted, emotional, making decisions based on personal feelings instead of business sense. Marco pulled out a tablet, started swiping. 3 months ago, you threatened war with the Castellanos over a woman. You've been seen multiple times in public with a civilian and her child creating vulnerabilities. You've missed meetings, delegated responsibilities, and generally behaved like someone who's given up. I attended the Castellano dinner, made that deal happen. After I set it up, after I did the groundwork while you were playing house with your waitress. Marco's voice hardened. You're a liability, Roman, and everyone here knows it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Roman saw calculation in people's eyes, measuring, weighing, deciding where to place their bets. That's your evidence? That I have a personal life? That's part of it. The other part is this. Marco pulled up something on the tablet, turned it to face the room. Financial records showing you've been moving money, large amounts, into accounts that have nothing to do with family business. Roman's stomach dropped. He'd been careful. Had Teresa help him set up legitimate accounts for... You've been setting up a trust fund, Marco continued, for Daniel Vale, the son of your girlfriend. $500,000 ready to be accessed when he turns 18. Marco looked around the room. Tell me that's not compromised. Tell me that's sound business judgment. The room erupted. People talking over each other, shock and condemnation mixing into a wave that crashed over Roman like a physical force. Teresa shot to her feet. That's not illegal. Roman can do what he wants with his own money. His own money? Everything he has comes from the family. From businesses we've all built together. Marco pointed at Roman. He's putting our resources into securing a future for some kid he's known for 3 months. That's not leadership. That's desperation. Roman wanted to defend himself, wanted to explain that the trust fund was insurance, protection for Danny if something happened, if Marco won and took everything, if Lydia needed resources to keep her son safe. But explanations would sound like excuses. You're right, Roman said quietly. The room went silent. I did set up a trust fund for a 5-year-old boy who didn't ask to be part of this, but got dragged in anyway because I couldn't stay away from his mother. Roman looked around the room, meeting eyes. I did it because that kid deserves a future that doesn't depend on which criminal his mom happens to date. I did it because protecting people I care about is more important than maintaining some illusion of strength. You hear that? Marco addressed the crowd. He admits it. Admits he's putting personal feelings above family interests. I'm putting humanity above business. There's a difference. Not in our world, there isn't. Marco moved closer, circling. In our world, caring about people makes you weak, makes you exploitable. Our father understood that. I understand that. You used to understand it too before 3 bullets scrambled your priorities. Something in Roman snapped. You mean before someone tried to kill me? Before I spent 3 days in a hospital wondering if I'd ever move again? Before I had to rebuild everything from scratch while you swooped in like a vulture picking at remains? I stepped up when you couldn't. You moved in when I was vulnerable. There's a difference. They faced each other, brothers who'd competed their whole lives, now finally drawing the lines they'd been dancing around for months. Did you do it? Roman asked quietly. Did you set up the shooting? The room went deathly silent. Marco's face showed perfect shock. You think I think you benefited more than anyone. I think you've been positioning yourself to take over since the day I got shot. I think... Roman stopped, seeing something flicker in Marco's eyes. Recognition. Guilt. You knew. Even if you didn't pull the trigger, you knew it was coming. You're paranoid. Am I? Roman turned to the crowd. My own brother waited for me to be shot before making his move. Waited for me to be weak. And now he's using the fact that I care about people, that I've tried to be better than what our father made us, as evidence I'm unfit to lead. Because you are unfit, Marco said coldly. You're soft, compromised, everything our father warned us not to become. Our father died alone and hated. That's what his strength got him. Our father built an empire. Our father built a prison, and I'm done living in it. The words hung there, impossible to take back. Roman saw shock ripple through the assembled crowd, saw Marco's face go white with rage. Then you're done, period, Marco said quietly. You want out? Fine. Walk away. Give me control and go play family with your waitress and her bastard son. But you don't get to keep one foot in both worlds. You choose. Right now. Roman looked around the room, saw faces he'd known for years, some sympathetic, most calculating. Saw the empire his father had built, his grandfather before that. Saw everything he'd been raised to protect and expand and eventually pass on. Then he thought about Lydia's laugh, Danny's dinosaur drawings, spaghetti on the ceiling and coffee shop conversations, and the way it felt to be seen as just Roman instead of Roman DeLuca. I choose them, he said. The room exploded. People shouting, arguing, Marco's face going through emotions too fast to track. Teresa grabbed Roman's arm. Think about this. I have. For 3 months I've been trying to balance both worlds, and it's destroying me. Marco's right about one thing. I can't do both. Roman looked at his brother. You want the empire? Take it. Run the businesses. Make the deals. Live in our father's shadow. I'm done. You're walking away. Marco sounded genuinely shocked. From everything. From this. Not from everything. Roman turned his chair toward the door.
The money I moved for Danny's trust? That's mine, legally separate from family assets. Teresa helped me make sure of that months ago. Everything else, the businesses, the properties, the whole complicated mess, it's yours. Congratulations. Roman, wait. Teresa hurried after him. You can't just... There are procedures, transfers of power, legal... Handle it. You're good at that. He stopped, turned back to face the room one last time.
Anyone who has a problem with this transition, talk to Marco. He's your leader now. Anyone who has a problem with me personally, come find me. But leave Lydia and her son alone. They're civilians. They're out. And you? Dominic Castellano spoke up from the back. What are you now? Just a guy in a wheelchair trying to figure out how to be better than he was. Roman met his eyes. That enough for you? Dominic studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. That's enough. Roman left. Rolled out of the house he'd grown up in, past the cars of people who'd come to watch him fall, into a night that felt impossibly vast. Teresa followed, Vincent behind her, both looking shell-shocked. What did you just do? Teresa asked. Something I should have done months ago. Roman pulled out his phone, texted Vincent the address where Lydia was staying. I need to go see her, now. Roman, you can't just walk away from I didn't walk, I rolled. And yes, I can. Watch me. The safe house was 40 minutes outside the city, a small cottage on property Roman owned through enough shell companies that Marco would never find it. Vincent had stocked it with food and supplies, made it comfortable despite the isolation. Lydia opened the door before Roman could knock. She took one look at his face and knew. What happened? I gave it all to Marco, the business, the empire, everything. She pulled him inside, checked to make sure Danny was still asleep in the bedroom, then sat across from him. Everything? Everything that mattered to them. Not everything that matters to me. Roman took her hands. I kept enough money to be comfortable, kept properties that are clean, legitimate, but the criminal empire, the deals, the constant danger, I gave that to my brother. Let him have what he always wanted. Why? Because I can't protect you and run that world at the same time. Because I'm tired of being who my father wanted instead of who I want to be. Because... He stopped, swallowed hard. Because I love you. Both of you. And that matters more than power. Lydia's eyes went shiny. You love me. I love you. Completely. Possibly stupidly. Definitely inconveniently. Roman pulled her closer. I should have said it sooner, but I was scared. Scared you'd think it was too fast or too much, or... She kissed him, stopped his words with her mouth, her hands in his hair, her whole body saying what words couldn't quite capture. I love you too, she whispered against his lips. I've been terrified to say it. Terrified you'd realize I wasn't worth all this trouble. You're worth everything. Roman rested his forehead against hers. So what do we do now? Now? Now we figure out what normal life looks like for two people who have no idea how to be normal. Sounds terrifying. Sounds perfect. They stayed at the safe house for a week while Teresa handled the legal transition and made sure Marco understood the boundaries. Roman spent the time with Lydia and Danny, playing dinosaurs, making terrible dinners, existing in a bubble where nothing mattered except the three of them. It was the happiest week of Roman's life. On the 8th day, Teresa called with news. It's done. Marco has full control. All the transfers are complete. You're officially out. How's he handling it? Like he won the lottery and can't believe his luck. I think he expected you to fight harder. I'm done fighting for things I don't want anymore. Roman, Teresa's voice went soft. Are you sure about this? Once it's done, it's done. You can't take it back. I'm sure. More sure than I've been about anything in years. He looked over at where Lydia was reading to Danny on the couch, both of them absorbed in a story about dragons. I have everything I need right here. Okay, then I'm happy for you. She paused. Dad would have hated this. I know. That's how I know it's right. They moved back to the city slowly, carefully. Roman kept security on them. Old habits died hard, but it was different now. Lighter. No longer the weight of an empire, just the reasonable precautions of someone who'd made enemies. Lydia kept working at the cafe. Danny started calling Roman Roman instead of Mr. DeLuca, which felt like progress. They found a rhythm that worked. Messy and imperfect, but theirs. 2 months after Roman had walked away from everything, Sarah called him with news. "You ready for this?" "For what?" "I think you can walk. Not far, not without support, but enough to stand at your own wedding without the chair." Roman's heart stopped. "My what?" "Teresa mentioned you were planning to propose, figured you'd want to be able to stand for it." He'd been planning to propose. Had the ring, simple, elegant, nothing that screamed wealth, hidden in his apartment for weeks. Had been waiting for the right moment. Maybe there was no right moment. Maybe you just chose a moment and made it right. That evening, Roman took Lydia and Danny back to the park where they'd first spent a Sunday together. The same worn equipment, the same tired grass, the same sense of being somewhere that belonged to them. "Why are we here?" Danny asked, already running toward the swings. "I wanted to show your mom something." "Is it a surprise?" "The best kind." Roman had Vincent and Sarah waiting nearby, just in case. Had practiced for hours learning to stand with just a crutch for support. Had pushed his body past every limit to make this work. When the sun started setting, golden light making everything soft and forgiving, Roman called Lydia over. She came, Danny trailing behind, both looking curious and slightly confused. "I need you to stand in front of me," Roman said. "Okay?" Lydia positioned herself a few feet away. "What's going on?" Roman locked his wheelchair, gripped the crutch Vincent had placed within reach, and, with Sarah's whispered encouragement in his earpiece, began to stand. It took forever. His legs shook violently, muscles screaming, every nerve firing pain signals. But inch by inch, he rose. Stood, stayed standing. Lydia's hand flew to her mouth. "Roman, I'm not done." He was breathing hard, sweat already beading on his forehead, but he stayed up. "I've spent 3 months learning to stand so I could do this properly." "Do what?" He pulled the ring from his pocket, nearly dropped it, caught it, held it up with a hand that trembled from effort. "Marry me. You and Danny both. Be my family, not because I need saving or you need security, but because we choose each other, every day, even when it's hard." Tears streamed down Lydia's face. "You're standing." "I'm standing. For you. For us." Roman's voice cracked. "I can't promise I'll always be able to do this. Can't promise I'll ever walk normally again, but I can promise I'll keep trying, keep choosing you, keep being better than I was." "Say yes, Mom!" Danny bounced excitedly. "Say yes so we can be a real family." "We're already a real family," Lydia whispered. But she was nodding, crying, closing the distance between them. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you, we'll marry you." She had to hold him up while he got the ring on her finger. Had to support his weight when his legs finally gave out, and he crashed back into the chair, gasping and triumphant. But the ring was on. The promise was made. They got married 3 months later in a small church that didn't care about criminal empires or wheelchairs or anything except the fact that 2 people loved each other. Teresa served as maid of honor. Vincent walked Lydia down the aisle. Danny was ring bearer and took the job so seriously he practiced for weeks. Marco didn't come. Sent a card, stiff and formal, but stayed away. Roman was grateful. Some wounds healed better with distance. The ceremony was simple. Traditional vows that meant everything because they were choosing them. When the minister said, "You may kiss the bride," Roman did something he'd been planning for months. With Sarah's help, with braces hidden under his suit pants, with every ounce of strength he'd rebuilt over countless hours of therapy, Roman stood, used his crutch for support, but stood on his own 2 feet, and kissed Lydia while the small crowd erupted in tears and applause. "Show off," Lydia whispered against his mouth. "Had to make it memorable." "Trust me, it's memorable." They held the reception at Maria's Cafe, the place where Lydia worked, where Roman had first fixed one of her problems, where normal life happened. It was perfect, small and warm and filled with people who actually cared about them instead of what they represented. During the toast, Danny stood on a chair and announced to everyone that Roman was the best stepdad in the world because he always listened to dinosaur facts and never told him to be quiet. Lydia cried. Roman cried. Half the room cried. Teresa pulled Roman aside during dessert. "You did it. You actually walked away and built something real. We did it. You helped make this possible. I'm proud of you. Dad wouldn't be, but I am. That's all that matters." Later, much later, after Danny had crashed from sugar and excitement and was asleep at Teresa's place for the night, Roman and Lydia went home. Not to his penthouse or her studio apartment, but to a small house they'd bought together in a quiet neighborhood where nobody knew or cared who Roman DeLuca used to be. "Mrs. DeLuca," Roman said as they pulled into the driveway. "That's going to take getting used to. You don't have to take my name if you don't want. I want. Danny wants. We're a family now, official and everything." She smiled. "How are your legs?" "Destroyed. I'll pay for that standing tomorrow." "Worth it?" "Completely." Inside, Lydia helped him out of the braces, rubbed his legs when they cramped, held him through the pain that was the price of those few moments standing. She didn't complain or suggest he shouldn't have pushed so hard, just stayed with him, silent support that meant everything. "Thank you," Roman said when the pain finally eased. "For what?" "For seeing me when I was invisible, for staying when you should have run, for making me believe I could be more than what I was. You were always more. You just needed permission to show it. And you gave me that permission. We gave it to each other." Lydia curled against him, careful of his sore legs. "What happens now?" "Now? Now we live. We raise Danny. We figure out what normal people do with their time." He paused. "I was thinking about starting a foundation for single parents. Help with childcare costs, job training, housing assistance. All the things you needed and didn't have. Using your criminal empire money to help people? Redemption's expensive. Might as well spend the money on something that matters. I love you. I love you too. Both of you." Roman kissed her forehead. "Thank you for choosing me even when I was broken." "You were never broken, just bent. There's a difference." They fell asleep like that, tangled together in a house that was theirs, in a life they'd built from courage and choice and the radical belief that broken people deserved love too. 6 months later, the foundation opened. The DeLuca Family Foundation for Single Parents, funded by Roman's legitimate money, run by people who actually cared, helping families like Lydia's had been. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was just practical help for people who needed it. Marco called once, awkward and stiff, congratulating Roman on the foundation. They talked for maybe 5 minutes before running out of things to say. The conversation ended with mutual understanding that some relationships couldn't be saved, but at least they could be civil. Danny thrived, started first grade with confidence that came from being loved unconditionally. Told everyone his dad was the coolest because he had a special chair and could still do everything. Roman went to every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every soccer game where Danny spent more time looking at clouds than the ball. Lydia quit the cafe eventually, not because Roman asked, but because the foundation needed someone who understood the struggles firsthand. She became their director of client services, helping families navigate systems that had once defeated her. Roman kept going to physical therapy. Some days were better than others. Some days he could walk with crutches for almost an hour. Other days his legs refused to cooperate, and he spent the whole day in the chair. He learned to accept both, learned that strength wasn't about standing, but about showing up anyway. On Danny's 7th birthday, Roman officially adopted him. The paperwork was simple, but the meaning was enormous. Danny cried when the judge made it official, threw himself at Roman with so much force he nearly knocked them both over. "You're really my dad now?" Danny asked. "I've been your dad. Now it's just legal. Does that mean I get your last name?" "If you want it." "I want it. Daniel DeLuca sounds cool." It did sound cool. It sounded like family. 2 years after the wedding, Lydia found out she was pregnant. They talked about it, planned for it, but actually seeing those 2 lines sent them both into shock. "We're having a baby," Lydia said, staring at the test. "We're having a baby," Roman repeated, equally stunned. Danny was thrilled, immediately started planning everything his new sibling would need to know about dinosaurs and space and why broccoli was terrible no matter what adults said. The pregnancy was normal, unremarkable in the best way. No drama, no complications, just Lydia growing rounder while Roman worried and fussed and drove her crazy with his overprotectiveness. Their daughter was born on a Tuesday morning in April, small and perfect and screaming with impressive lung power. They named her Elena, after Roman's mother. The grandmother who'd died too young, before she could see her son choose something other than the path his father had set. Roman held Elena for the first time and felt something break open in his chest. This tiny person, who would never know the criminal he'd been, who would only know the father he'd chosen to become. "You okay?" Lydia asked from the hospital bed, exhausted but smiling. "I'm perfect. We're perfect." Roman looked at his wife, his daughter, thought about his son waiting at home with Teresa. "How did I get this lucky?" "You chose it. You chose us." Lydia reached for his hand. "That's not luck. That's courage." Maybe she was right. Maybe the bravest thing he'd ever done wasn't running an empire or facing down enemies or even walking away from power. Maybe it was just choosing to love people despite the risk, choosing to be vulnerable, choosing family over fear. The years that followed weren't easy. Money got tight sometimes, despite the foundation's success. Danny went through phases where he was difficult and moody. Elena inherited her father's stubbornness and her mother's determination in equal measure. Roman's legs continued to be unpredictable, good days and bad days mixing randomly. But it was real, messy and imperfect and completely real. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Roman took Lydia back to the park where he'd proposed. Danny was at a friend's house. Elena was with Teresa. They had the evening to themselves. "You know what I realized?" Roman said as they sat on the same bench where they'd once watched Danny play. "What?" "That night at the wedding, when you asked me to dance, that was the beginning of everything. Everything good in my life started with you being brave enough to see me. I wasn't brave. I was desperate, lonely. Same thing sometimes." Roman pulled her close. "Thank you for being desperate and lonely in my direction." Lydia laughed. "Most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me." "I mean it. You saved me. We saved each other." She kissed him softly. "And we're still saving each other, every day." That was the truth of it. Not some dramatic rescue or grand gesture, but the daily choice to stay, to see each other's flaws and struggles and choose love anyway, to build something real from the wreckage of who they'd been. Roman had been a king who'd lost his empire. Lydia had been invisible to everyone except her son. Together, they'd become something neither could have managed alone. A family built on choice instead of obligation, on love instead of convenience, on the radical belief that broken people deserved second chances. The sun set over the worn playground equipment. Somewhere in the city, Marco ran an empire that would eventually consume him the way it had consumed their father. Somewhere else, people the Foundation helped were building better lives. But here, in this small pocket of ordinary life, Roman and Lydia just existed. Just chose each other one more time. Just kept building their impossible, imperfect, absolutely perfect life. "Ready to go home?" Lydia asked eventually. "Always." Roman took her hand. "As long as home is wherever you are." They left the park together, rolling and walking side by side the way they'd learned to move through the world. Not perfect, not graceful, but together. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.